Good evening, sir. Need any help?
Well, I think we all do in these troubled times, don't we?
I meant in my capacity as shopkeeper, sir.
Oh, yes, of course, yes. I'd like to buy some canned laughter, please.
Canned laughter, sir?
Yes, for a show I'm doing. @NecroSpuff69 said he or she felt the show needed some in the absence of an actual studio audience.
Well, you shouldn't pay attention to what everyone says on Twitter, sir.
No. @NecroSpuff69 works in ABC programming. I got a memo after last week's show.
Well, I'm afraid we're fresh out of canned laughter, sir. Channel 9 are re-editing that 60 Minutes interview with Jerry Harvey. They've cleaned us right out. I could do you some farm animals.
Will that work?
Well, why don't we give it a try, sir? You read out one of your jokes and I'll cue it up.
All right, thank you. The opposition leader, Anthony Albanese, recently lavished the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, with praise, comparing him to a beloved children's TV personality.
Mr Speaker, the fact is this is the Humphrey B. Bear of politics.
I'm not sure it's a fair comparison, though, because in 2003, Humphrey became a national trust icon. And I think Scott's still got some work to do in that department.
Couldn't tell the difference, sir. Will that be cash or card?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's OK for a quick joke in a cold opener like this, but not for the whole show.
Well, I've got some traffic noises.
No, I don't think so.
Farts?
No, our show is above that sort of humour. I think we'll go without again for this week. Goodbye.
Nothing else I can help you with, sir?
You don't have any toilet paper, do you?
We've had a bit of a run on it, sir.
Oh, what a pity. I was hoping it could be our punchline.
I do have a pop cultural reference you could end on, sir. It's a bit obscure.
Oh, I like obscure.
It's actually very obscure, sir.
I don't care how fucking obscure it is. Fetch the punchline with all speed.
Oh, dear.
What's wrong?
It requires an impression of Jimmy Stewart from the 1946 film It's a Wonderful Life, and I can't do him.
Oh, he's very easy. He just goes like this. Now, wait a minute here. Wait a minute.
Ah, yes. Thank you, sir. Now, wait a minute here. Now, wait a minute. Now, who needs toilet paper?
Oh, but George... I'll be the old lady. But George, that's your own paper.
Never you mind about that. Never you mind. And just enough to tide you over until the economy reopens. Now how many sheets?
Well, just 2 sheets.
2 sheets. God bless your heart.
Well, good evening. While much of the planet is in lockdown this week, it's reassuring to know that life still goes on as normal in some countries.
North Korea has launched multiple short-range projectiles into the sea.
Obviously in an attempt to stop any cruise ships from docking there. Here in Australia, of course, things aren't normal. The coalition government is spending like a drunken Labor government. And if an Englishman, an Irishman and a Scotsman walk into a bar, one of them would have to leave, the pub would be closed anyway, and all 3 wouldn't have been allowed into the country in the first place. So what can we all do to make it through this, bound together as we are by our common shared humanity? And who can we blame if we can't? Well, a great man once said that those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. I forget who it was, probably doesn't matter. What's important is that's more or less exactly what our Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, said last week when he addressed Parliament, calling on all of us to look to the lessons
from those who have come before us and shown us the way through challenges and tests just like this. So we summon the spirit of the Anzacs.
A patriotic message heard loud and clear across our wide brown land, at least by these sunbathers in St Kilda and those swimmers in Bronte who, just like our boys at Gallipoli, insisted on going to the beach even though the local authorities tried their best to stop them. But it's not just our beaches that are closed, although one surprise exemption from the list of businesses that are required to shut down are hairdressers, which I think is particularly magnanimous, a decision by our government, given how many members of both the House of Representatives and the Senate stand to gain absolutely nothing personally from it. Initially, though, the PM put a time limit on each hairdressing appointment of 30 minutes, presumably on the advice from the Chief Medical Officer. But after the advice from the Chief Hairdressing Officer, he gave us all hair extensions, withdrawing the 30-minute limit, presumably after Micallef asked how on earth he expected her to get that sort of do happening in only half an hour. The National Cabinet's correction mistress, Dremella Burt, joins us now. Dremella, this crisis has been described as a black swan event.
Well, as far as the ABC is concerned, it's become a Norman Swan event. I can't turn my 65-inch OLED on without seeing him. I'm surprised he hasn't popped up on Bluey.
But the government's response, though, specifically the lockdown announcements, impose severe restrictions on our day-to-day life.
They do, but then so does being dead.
Well, just on that, one of the new restrictions is that funerals are now limited to 10 mourners. No limit, though, on the numbers of those happy to see the deceased dead. Could I, for example, have 10 mourners at my funeral and another 2, to stay within the new definition of group, who were delighted by my demise?
Well, I think we'd have to put the indoor limit back up to 500.
And why only 5 at weddings, yet 10 at funerals? Are funerals twice as popular?
Well, no, but generally you don't need 6 people to carry you out after a wedding, unless you've fainted at the realisation that you've just married some virtue-signalling, anti-coal, eco-warrior nutbox who's going to insist that your respirator is run on intermittent wind power.
Sorry, I just drifted off there and was thinking 5 at weddings and 2 people can train together outdoors, so I could have 7 people at my garden wedding if we all did squats during the ceremony.
Sure. And if all 7 were your little mates from the ABC, then squat is what they would be used to doing.
She's so mean.
That's only a character.
What about food courts and shopping centres having to close?
Well, apparently people gather there. I've never been to one. I'd assumed food courts were where unhygienic restaurants were prosecuted.
You're also banning adult entertainment venues. Would that include this studio?
Hardly, on either count.
Are you confident, though, that when this is all over, the sex industry will be able to get back on its back?
Well, I would say to anyone looking to open a new adult entertainment venue, build it and they will come.
And finally, the JobKeeper program. Now that up to 6 million Australians will be paid $130 billion thanks to the Australian taxpayer, will you be insisting that they display no left-wing bias?
Kept that sarcastic little arrow in your quiver till the end, didn't you? Well, the difference, Captain Satire, is that those people were in productive employment. They're not part of this profligate political front, monothought, self-congratulatory, socks and sandals, doomsday cult, sheltered workshop.
Well, thank you, Dremella. And for coming in tonight, please accept this globule of hand sanitiser, courtesy of Mad as Hell.
No, I'm good.
You sure? All right. The government is also getting tough on enforcing self-isolation, which I guess makes the self bit redundant. Just isolation, isn't it? Oh, she's gone. Anyway, those not self-isolating when required to could face hefty fines and maybe even jail. Police can even conduct random spot checks. I'm not self-isolating. There's no need to check up on me.
Yes, I'm aware of that, Mr Micallef, but we were just in the building conducting a raid and we thought we might wash our hands.
Why the sledgehammer? Isn't that a bit extreme?
Well, I didn't want to touch the door handle, sir. So thank you for your cooperation, Mr Micallef.
Well, joining me now is Makwanda Philip Souza from the Civil Liberties Union. Is there a risk, Makwanda, the lockdown, that the restrictions of freedom of movement could be used to erode our rights?
I believe so, Shaun, yes.
One more thing, Mr Micallef. If you are thinking of self-isolating, it's best to keep windows like this shut. For your own safety, sir.
Well, thank you very much.
Have a pleasant evening.
We'll talk about this later.
Yep.
Also coming up later are the Tokyo Olympics. Could they still be held if we observe social distancing and reduce the whole thing to a single relay event with a 1.5-metre baton? Plus, our expert advice on how to catch a head cold. That's coming up soon. Of course, the closure of bars and pubs around the country is having an enormous impact, particularly on our livers, which are slowly returning to normal size. But at least in Sydney, their lockout laws were lifted last year, which means that a bar or a pub in that city is now not allowed to operate for longer than it wouldn't have been allowed to operate last year. At the time, Sydney Lord Mayor Clover Moore, her real name, declared that Sydney is open again before this week declaring it closed again, all their facilities completely and indefinitely, adding that we should all, where possible, stay home to stop the spread of COVID-19. Although, according to Angus Taylor's office, Ms Moore has shut them down for eternity to stop the spread of the COVID-19 million virus. Still, despite the warnings and the restrictions and the bans, some people aren't exactly helping when they go to the US, get infected in Aspen, come home and don't self-isolate, and then go to a 21st where they infect the guests. Penelope Impact, you're a fictional representation of those people. How do you explain yourself?
Shaun, we're Aussies. We have a proud larrikin tradition of flouting authority. If you tell me I have to stay inside for a fortnight, that's like a red rag to some of our breeding stock up in Bowral. We'll go right on out and do whatever the F we want.
Yeah, but a 21st party.
We'd already RSVP'd. It would have been rude to have cancelled.
You gave them coronavirus.
It was the 21st. It would have been even ruder not to have given them anything.
This is the trouble with this country, isn't it? We can't be told anything by anybody because of this misguided egalitarian, we're all the same regardless of our expertise, I'm the Prime Minister, but call me ScoMo bullshit.
Baseless equality is what this country was built on, Shaun. It's what we brought to this godforsaken hole 250 years ago.
Along with smallpox.
It's ridiculous. We can't go to the beach. We can't have barbecues. We can't get our roots done for 3 hours.
If you're talking about your hair, you can still do that.
Our national identity is at an existential tipping point, Shaun. They took away our football, burned our kangaroos, closed down Holden cars. I mean, what's off the menu next? Our meat pies?
Well, meat is murder.
And it gives you cancer. So the fuck what? I'm Australian and I'm going to go on being Australian even if it kills me and everybody else.
Still, I hope you've learned your lesson and at least forget about going on holidays for a while.
Oh, absolutely.
Good.
When all this is over and my husband's better, we're planning on getting away from it all and going to a weekend orgy at this little STD clinic in a leper colony on Anthrax Island.
Yes, well, thank you, Penelope.
No worry.
The main thought... Are you eating a bat?
Did you want some?
No, I'm good.
You sure?
No. And after the break, with all our sporting events cancelled, the gambling industry is cactused. Or so you would have thought had TAB and Sportsbet not decided to open betting on the weather. I speak to Davey Plum from All Bets 24/7 No Limit about whether this might replace the need for sport entirely.
Abso-fucking-Lutesville, Shaun. No overheads, players, kits, boots, balls, umpires, coaches, all that shit. All you need is a camera pointed at the sky to record that it rained, didn't, whatever, a thermometer for the temperature bets, and maybe someone to take a barometric pressure reading.
Don't even need a venue, do you?
Weather happens everywhere, Shaun. No grounds to maintain, no change rooms for governments to pull out their pork barrel, and best of all, you can't call weather off because of the rain or bad light, because that's what you're betting on. It's a fucking gold mine.
No advertising either, I suppose, because it's at the end of the news.
And those long odds extreme weather events like typhoons, hurricanes and shit often get right up there at the front end of the bulletin. Climate change means plenty of change for us, if you get me, so let's hope it's not reversible.
Well, we don't want humanity to die out, Davey.
We're taking bets on the time and method of the end of days, Shaun, and the odds are shortening, so you better get in fast. Thing is, you don't want man interfering too much in the climate, otherwise people are going to say it's all rigged. And once everyone thinks that, you may as well be online playing the pokies.
Anyway, that's later on in the show, and in fact, later on in the week...
Entertaining for large groups doesn't have to be a chore. Not with my bite-sized spicy fish cakes, followed by sweet, sticky gammon studded with cloves and smeared with treacle. Achoo! Miss Guzzy. While the gammon's in the oven, I can work the dough for my blackberry kuchen. Pardon me. And then it's time to mingle.
Nigella's Community Transmission Kitchen, coming soon.
Welcome back. Well, one of the upsides of the coronavirus has been zoos letting animals out of their enclosures so they can go and explore the other exhibits, like these flamingos here, who last week got the chance to have a wander through the aquarium. Zookeeper Willie Manilow, why?
Shaun, I got into zookeepery for one reason: to assert man's dominance over the animal kingdom and prove to them our superiority by locking them away so that other humans can come and look down their noses at them. Sadly, with the disappearance of the crowds, that sense of human mastery has gone. Now, I can feel the eyes of the marmosets and the tapirs peering at me through the cages, regarding me as just as much of a trapped curiosity as them. But by releasing a few flamingos into the aquarium or herding some tortoises through the lemur enclosure, I am confident that their baffled incomprehension will serve to prove that the real cage is that of their own perceptions. Once again, restoring the rightful role of the zookeeper as all-seeing, all-conquering sole arbiter of reality.
Aren't you worried that this may lead to a new dawning of consciousness on the part of the animals and your eventual overthrow in an uprising similar to Planet of the Apes?
Oh, hadn't thought of that. Excuse me, I've got to get a bucket of newts from the lion's cage.
Yes, but right now, to look at how the pandemic is affecting our hip pocket, here's Tosh Greenslade in a wig and glasses.
That's exactly right, Shaun. And in some rare good economic news, the budget bottom line is so far not taking the massive hit that was expected, thanks mainly to Centrelink's ineptitude. Remember the good old days when you could walk straight into a Centrelink office? Yeah, great memories. It's been a tough week, though, for Government Services Minister Stuart Robert. The MyGov website crashed and went offline, prompting this response from the minister.
MyGov has not been offline.
Which he later clarified by saying,
unfortunately, this morning we also suffered a distributed denial of service attack on our main channels.
Which he later clarified by saying,
the DDoS alarms show no evidence of a specific attack today.
Which is apparently why
we don't attribute in terms of where attacks come from.
And fair enough, because it must be bloody hard when they don't come from anywhere. Still, despite this more than reasonable explanation, Albo was less than gracious towards the minister.
This wasn't a cyber attack, it was an incompetence attack.
So, incompetence attacks Stuart Robert. That's bound to end in a draw, isn't it? Back to you, Shaun.
Thank you very much. Tosh Greenslade there in a wig and glasses. Tasmanian Senator Jackie Lambie too was unimpressed with Stuart Roberts' performance, and I think spoke for all of us when she said,
"Wake up, big boy. Get out with your shoes on and see what's going on out there. My God, where are you people?"
So, big boy, I'm not sure what that's a reference to, but certainly good hygiene advice about getting your shoes on before you go outside. Right now, though, it's time for a health update from Mad as Hell's very own plague doctor, Herman Schnabel.
I got a bad case of loving you.
Doctor, how can we flatten out the curve?
That's very simple, Shaun. All you need to do is scan the image, put it into your computer, paste it into a Word document, elongate the image, and then print it out.
And we're getting mixed messages about school, though, aren't we?
A guy I know from the pub's sister who once had a popular thread on Reddit about Kim Kardashian's bum says not to worry your head about your kids not being at school because they were being taught all the wrong things anyway. And NAPLAN testing gives you autism.
And finally, Dr McSchnabel, how did COVID-19 start?
Well, Shaun, I think we need to ask ourselves who stands to benefit most from this outbreak.
The highly anticipated public hearing into the controversial sports rot scandal postponed due to health concerns.
Just saying.
Thank you very much, Dr McSchnabel. Now, as we know, because of the coronavirus crisis, the government has effectively doubled the current rate of New Start for the next 6 months. Spokesperson for the Social Services Minister, Anne Ruston, Katharina Rott, why double the rate, particularly when Anne has consistently said...
Look, I have not said that it would be easy to live on New Start. Well, as I said, it wouldn't be easy. I've said it wouldn't be easy to live on New Start.
Not easy, but presumably not impossible either.
Well, Shaun, when people lose their job at a time like this, they expect support from the government.
Yeah, well, what were the people on New Start expecting before this?
Well, that's a question for them, Shaun.
Why now, though? I mean, I thought the government couldn't afford to increase New Start.
Oh, we can't, Shaun. But as a gesture of goodwill, for the duration of coronavirus, the government is prepared to live beyond its means.
Is it possible for the government to function in these circumstances? How will they pay for things like roads and shit?
Look, I've not said it would be easy.
Yeah, but is it adequate?
It wouldn't be easy, Shaun.
OK, but is it still possible for them to function as a government?
Shaun, I think I've answered the question. Our main objective is to keep the economy turning over.
In its grave?
Until we can get people back into employment, once there is any. The payment is only a safety net. We increased it because these latest people are really unemployed, instead of the 5% who are used to it, and we need to remain unemployed so that the cost of labour never actually grows.
Well, thank you, Katharina, for your time, and please accept with our compliments a pair of these social distancing pants. 4 square metres of personal space from our good friends at Global Pandemic Solutions. That's nice.
Yes, no, they're quite nice.
A question to consider, though, in all of this is that if New Start's only going to increase for the duration of the pandemic, won't it create an incentive for the people who are on the old payment to keep the pandemic going so they stay on the higher payment for as long as possible? Send your answers direct to the MyGov website, and I'd be very surprised if you get through. But what's going on beyond our borders in those bits of the world that we're not allowed to go to and visit anymore? Let's find out with...
News from countries that aren't Australia.
To America first, which is the way the President Trump likes it, and spare a thought for how difficult this time is for the Commander-in-Chief. He can't hold his rallies, his golf games are on hold, and he's not able to do his weird handshakes anymore. Worst of all, though, last Friday, he claimed, "I've been packed all day with meetings. I have no time for stupidity." Which is a pity, because it's one of his favourite things. To London now, and self-isolation expert Julian Assange's application for bail has been rejected.
The judge saying he remains a flight risk.
Or would be if there were any. The still overseas and unable to get a flight home, and
Donald Trump's approval rating has soared 5 points higher.
There's another curve that needs flattening. And doesn't it look like Britain got out of Europe just in time to beat the travel bans? They certainly wouldn't want to be stuck in France.
Restrictions in France are now in effect. 100,000 officers are on the streets to ensure no one is outdoors.
So 100,000 officers are outdoors to ensure that no one is outdoors. I'm not sure they can pull that off. Popular terrorist group Islamic State have issued a travel advisory for Europe advising its fighters not to travel to the region for terror attacks due to the coronavirus. Australian ISIS recruiter Travis Bredman joins me live from his garage. Tough times for the terror industry, Travis.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Well, thanks to this bloody pandemic, the marketplace of terror is extremely crowded right now. Not even the masks are scary anymore because now everyone's bloody wearing them now.
And how are you dealing with the travel ban?
Well, a lot of us are working from home, but obviously there are limitations as to how much havoc we can wreak. I mean, there's not much point me blowing myself up in the spare room my wife and I use as an office. She does her Pilates in there, and if her yoga mat and ergonomic ball got damaged in an explosion, I'd be very much in the doghouse. And that'd be no good because the internet reception's bloody terrible in there.
You haven't thought of changing professions?
No way. We've got to continue our normal terrorist activities, otherwise the virus wins.
Right now, though, I'd like to do something a little bit different on Mad as Hell, and that's play Green Onions by Booker T and the MGs.
Excuse me, Shaun? Excuse me, Shaun?
Excuse me. Yes, lady in the audience.
Yeah, Shaun, my question to the government is how long until these bloody stimulus packages kick in and get us through this bloody crisis and get me off welfare so I can finally start giving the government a hard time for all this reckless spending they're doing on these dole bludgers? Because I've got this idea for a T-shirt, right, with a big budget hole, like sucking money right into it, right, and then the words back in black. Whole. But yeah, I want to wait till it's tasteful to do so and for people to get back into the shops, obviously.
Well, that's a very good question. If you think you know the answer, blah, 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 and you could be in the running to win a set of matching Carvello car covers. Let Patricia and Karina keep the sun off, the rain out, and your car's clean and presentable with two of ABC's most alliterative presenters. That's nice.
This antelope has just been born. Within hours, it must learn to run with the herd or risk falling prey to hungry jackals like these.
That's Shaun Micallef's incorrect footage because we're understaffed. Thursdays at 1 a.m. Might be a repeat, I'm not sure.
Welcome back. Well, with news that the government has mothballed an inquiry which would have paved the way for laws to protect gay students and teachers from being expelled and sacked from religious schools, we asked advisor to the Attorney-General, Fenella Stank, why was the inquiry mothballed?
Because we view this issue very much as an irritating pest that we're trying to keep away from our delegates.
What happens to gay students and teachers in the meantime?
Shaun, the government's hardly concerned with students getting expelled and teachers getting sacked from schools that are closed now, are they?
But will this legislation deal with the hypothetical person who has started this whole debate, the baker who doesn't want to sell gay wedding cakes to same-sex couples? Frumpalina Jekyll.
It's enough, woman.
Larry Sidebottom and his beautiful wife Evadne have been running this bakery into the ground for the last 7 years.
Who's saying that?
Both are deeply religious and voted for the Morrison government in the hopes that their hate-based prejudice would be enabled by the Religious Protections Bill, or whatever it's called.
I got nothing against gay people, but if I don't want them to have a gay wedding cake, then I think it's my right as a God-fearing man or woman not to sell them one.
Larry, and this will come as no surprise to anyone who has seen this character before, is angry. The new legislation allows people to conscientiously object to a procedure, not a person.
In other words, Larry can't not sell his gay wedding cakes to someone because they're homosexual. He has to not sell them because they're gay wedding cakes. This means he can't sell them to anyone.
I've been coming here for years and I think it's disgraceful. I'm not gay, but I enjoy a gay wedding cake and a Coke for my lunch every day. We all do on the building site where I work. Bloody political correctness gone mad. I mean, the inference is I'm some sort of pervert because I like cake. Who doesn't like a bit of cake with their mates now and then? Doesn't mean anything.
Another disappointed customer is Fritziana Turd, a performance artist with the Box Hill TAFE Arts Collective. Fritziana, your troupe use gay wedding cakes as part of your act, don't you?
Yes, we do. We smear them on our naked bodies and then we roll around in the cream and then the audience are invited on stage to lick us clean. This new legislation's really spoiled it for everybody.
So what will you do now?
Oh, probably just use straight people wedding cakes. They're virtually indistinguishable.
All wedding cakes are pretty gay anyway, so what's the difference? Perhaps only an expert can say.
Well, it's about your intention, isn't it? I mean, if I'm putting a pig in a blanket, I've got to put the sausage inside the pastry. I can't just put the sausage into another sausage, can I? It's the same as these cannolis here. I have to inject the custard into the cylindrical pastry hole. There's no point forcing two holes together, grinding their openings around each other. Hole on hole's not going to satisfy anybody, is it? Whereas pumping the hole full of... Oh, God, look what you've made me done. I've spilled my custard all over the dusty ground, contrary to scripture. If you'll excuse me, I must go and apply a cilice or spiked belt around my thigh. As punishment.
When do we want it? But not being allowed to not sell gay wedding cakes to whoever they don't want is the least of the problems facing this god-bothering cis couples bakery. These stereotypical lefty women behind me who exist only in sketch comedy. And parts of Glebe and Northcote are protesting that there are only gingerbread men displayed in the window and not the full representation of the non-binary LGBTQI community or ladies.
You're arguing from an incorrect premise. There is no patriarchal tyranny. If they'd used my M&M buttons as breasts, there'd be protests about sexualising the female body. Do I have a penis? No. Am I just a piece of gingerbread in human form? Yes.
In the end, it's easy to see how difficult it is to follow the argument. If people can't sell gay wedding cakes to anybody, regardless of their sexuality, then the gay wedding cake market is driven underground.
Lord Jason Peabody Smythe and Grunt McTeagle Jr., not their real names, make a living buying heterosexual wedding cakes wholesale, repurposing them into gay and lesbian wedding cakes illegally, and then selling them to desperate homosexual couples out of their van at grossly inflated prices.
If only people realised that God isn't real. And if he is, he's a lot more reasonable than we've been led to believe. I'm Frumpalina Jekyll for Mad as Hell.
Well, not coming up because you can't ask that is on in a minute.
Evasive product displays. Could they keep toilet paper on supermarket shelves for longer? And Chief Commissioner points out gap in the law.
It's not a crime to be a dickhead.
And as we all prepare for the long winter flu season by going into economic hibernation, a shout out to our PM for his $1,500 a fortnight JobKeeper payment, particularly the fact that the government
will pay employers to pay their employees.
Employment continuity is maintained, payments are not just for full-time employees, and because the businesses are paying their stuff directly, it doesn't have anything to do with that incompetent boob Stuart Robert. Goodbye.
Giant baby.